Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm here today with Lindsay. So this is a part two. We've been doing a interview, like a discussion. So we did the first half on her channel. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out. And then we're just continuing the conversation over here.
Yeah, happy to get right back into it. And we're going to kind of hit the growth section of kind of like the fixed mindset, or like the default mindset that we started with was the first half, and now we're kind of going into the fun part, which is the growth part. So at what point in your life did you start to kind of challenge your own mindset, would you say?
I think, well, so the first place I went, I think I had some trauma to process. So the first place I went was actually counseling. And so then through the counselor, she randomly recommended StrengthsFinder. And then at StrengthsFinder, there were some things that came up like Futuristic or Ideation, and there were things, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So then that kind of got me interested into Myers-Briggs and then cognitive functions. And so it really was that time in my life, I just started digging into all these different systems and Enneagram. And I started kind of just trying to use them all for growth as much as I could. So yeah, so I think it was, I've kind of always been growth oriented, trying to be the best version of myself. But as far as personal development, it was probably early 20s that I really started to do that. And I really tried to work on the methods I've used so far is to work on TE and SE. And I've heard other people use different methods. I feel like I'm not ready developmentally to work. I've heard some people say you should try to develop NE or TI or things like that. So I haven't experimented with that at this point, but I probably will at some point.
Yeah, I think there's definitely different ways to look at it in terms of, my whole thing was I want to try to understand and be better at FE type things, but really the solution to that was just getting more in touch with my own FI so that FE wasn't so scary. But I think that earlier in life that I didn't really notice the fact that I wasn't tuning into FI and SE very much. It's just you were just living life, and you didn't really notice the deficit until certain things started to come up. And for me, I think that was more of the FI type things, like we talked about earlier, was with school, kind of going on this track, and I don't really know how I actually feel about it, and having to assess that a little bit more. But I think that it was really probably around 23 to 24 where I started to get some real red flags in terms of what I then learned to be emotional intelligence. That I was like, okay, whatever just happened in this situation over here, I missed the mark. I did not do a good job at it. And for myself, someone who generally feels very prepared in pretty much most situations that I know are going to happen, I generally can pull it off and be like, okay, at least I pulled that off all right. But there were some of these emotional type situations that had come up, and I'm like, I epically failed how that should have gone down. And so that's when I started to kind of go down what is emotional intelligence, and start to try to learn more about, okay, where am I missing the mark on this versus where could I start to learn and grow.
Yeah, I've literally read books on body language, how to have better body language, to nod when people are talking. I remember the first time I ever read nod when people are talking, I was like, oh,
well,
wow.
Shoot. One of my favorite was Charisma Command did a video about where they basically tore apart Mark Zuckerberg. And through that video of him being torn apart, I realized certain things about myself that I was like, oh, I'm kind of missing the mark in those same areas too. And they're just being so harsh on him, and I felt so bad for him. I was like, this poor guy. And they're like, yeah, everyone thinks he's really shifty because he never shows the palms of his hands when he's talking. And I was like, I don't show the palms of my hands because my camera's too close to me, so maybe I should back up a little bit, and just really, really interesting.
Yeah, there's so many bodily awareness things. I did a coaching call, and they were like, on your videos, you're so far away from the camera. They're like, have you ever thought about coming closer? You can see my pants. It's so far away from the camera.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, okay, now that it's brought to my attention, yes, absolutely, I can make that change. Yeah, I think the attention is a big part of it. Um, so do you have any memories of times where you're kind of embarrassed by the cognitive imbalance, and like that you had at that moment in life, and then as a result of that, and maybe embarrassed isn't like the best word, but like it was brought to your awareness, and then you're like, okay, I need to kind of grow in this specific area because of what happened here.
I think I wonder, like, I feel like I feel like I don't get embarrassed by NI very much, but I have gotten embarrassed by TE, just kind of like, it's like using it, but maybe not as skilled as it would be if it was like a first function. And I have gotten a lot of feedback over the course of the years that my TE needs developed. Like, I don't know if I can think of specific moments, but just in general, especially through high school, I was just so argumentative. I just like to like debate things, but sometimes I wouldn't necessarily have the knowledge to back it up, and sometimes I was just kind of being kind of like a jerk about it, just like arguing.
Yeah.
And I think so. I got some like messaging that's basically like, you need to work on this. So I tried to like tone that down a little bit. But then it's like at the same time, I think in toning down the bad parts of TE or the unrefined parts of TE, I just kind of started like suppressing it in general. That's just like people don't like to be bossed around. People don't like it, obviously. And so I just kind of like stopped using it. And then it was when, I got back into Myers-Briggs. So I was like, you know what, there's a better way to use TE. Like I can work on it better in a way that people like it more, in a way that like at least serves me. If I'm not just using it to boss other people around, I can at least use it to, have more self-leadership. So something.
Yeah. No, that's a great kind of like train of thought where TE kind of in an unrefined state can just be a little bit more than what people signed up for. And it definitely, and then I think that kind of like balances to, it's like as we grow in our own FI, and it's like when I realize more the way that I would actually like to be treated by other people, then it's easier to kind of communicate with them and in that way. Like when I realize that, like, actually, do you know what? I like it when FI like it when these certain boundaries I've created are respected. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I should ask someone, before I just like tell them to do something if they're able to, because I'm like, oh yeah, like I actually, would want that for myself as well. And so that can be a process with TE. And I think, for myself, again, the other people's emotions type situations that just scared the hell out of me, because I was never the person that could go and just be like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. Like I never had that vibe. And a few times where I was in situations where there was no one else, I was the only one stuck there on the deserted island with the emotional, like very like traumatized person. And I felt so helpless because I'm like, this has to be some basic human quality that I just don't possess. And why the heck not, And so that was definitely one of my red flags that went up, to be like, okay, let's try to discover what this is more so that I'm not stuck in this situation again, because I feel extremely uncomfortable not being able to manage the situation.
Right. Yeah, I can think of like one situation where I was sitting like next to someone and they were just bawling, and I was just kind of like, do I like, I'm like, like pat your back. I was like, all of a sudden I was like, people do that. I was like, I don't know. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've been in that situation. I wonder if I just subconsciously just don't put myself in those circles. I can't think of, like, I really have not been in that instance in a long time.
You can like sense it from the next room. You're like, there's weird emotions there. We're going the other way. So what has been an unexpected reward of your growth journey?
I kind of unexpectedly, when I was in one of my SE spurts that we talked about in the last video, that's when I started this channel with the 2 fashion videos. And then eventually I was like, okay, I don't want to do this. And eventually I was doing personal growth and the finances. I did all sorts of stuff. And then I kind of like landed on personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for like a TE reason. Like I was like, okay, you know what? This could be a path to somewhere else. If I would like to eventually do this, this could be a way to build the skills on the way up without like necessary qualifications. But I didn't expect to find like, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I didn't expect to like find friends in the process. I didn't expect to be more understood than I was before. Like it just has like bled into my real life. Like I've like found subscribers that live in my same city, and so hang out. It's just I like didn't expect anything like that. I didn't expect to like then have this translate to my real life where I have friends and can like talk stuff about it. Like I just think I didn't expect that from a TE choice that would then bleed down into my bottom two functions and like have more friendships.
Yeah. It's very similar for mine too. And it's interesting too, like with your kind of journey to getting to your topic, or really just like the area of information that you talk about, it was kind of similar to mine as well, because I didn't really know, right? This is kind of like that FE lacking part too. It's like, I didn't really know what other people would value in terms of my content, you know? Right. I'm like, what do I do well in front of people that they would like and watch again? I don't know, you know? Right. And so I was like, I had planned for like my first year to be an experiment and be like, what can I talk about that works, you know? And I hit some wide topics and kind of, you know, started to see like, okay, you know, for me, that was a long journey of like, okay, making videos for no one, fine. And finally, actually, I was in a typing class, and we were working on typing this other girl who was actually a YouTuber for that week. And this girl had TE. And it was, what really struck me was the instructors in the class, they were like, you know, she's making this content about all this stuff, but she doesn't even like it. She doesn't even like what she's talking about right now. And like that hit me so dead on, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing that same thing at that point, you know? I was like, I'm making content about stuff I literally don't even care about. And that's not okay with me now that I'm looking at someone else doing it and kind of how weird it's coming across. And so at that point, I was like, I'm just going to, you know what, I'm really into this like type and like growth stuff. And I'm just going to do that because that's what I really like and enjoy and I find beneficial. And sure enough, that was the thing that ended up working the best anyway.
That is so interesting. That is the thing that like scares me sometimes about YouTube. Like if I ever do videos about like FJs in particular, I'm like, they're going to read me. They're going to read me like a book. They're going to know what I'm doing. They're going to pick up on things that I myself am not picking up on. I just think that's super interesting. Oh, there's something else I was going to say, but I don't remember.
But you went around kind of like the same, you kind of went wide on your topics and then got down to the thing that you wanted to talk about too. Was that because like you were assessing really like what you end up liking the most, or was it what was resonating with people the most on your channel?
Oh yes, this is what I was going to say. Like I was thinking of like, you know, you hear different advice from people that's like, don't do what, you know, you just want to talk about. Like do what the audience wants. Like you need to be valuable for the audience. And then which I think is kind of like an FE perspective, you know, like you need to be serving people, you need to be helping people. Right. And there's some people that use like more FI and they're like, you know what, just do what lights you up because that is what the world needs. People need people that are lit up. And I feel like since we don't have FE, I feel like both of those approaches are valid. Just like it depends on like which one resonates with you, which makes more sense. And I feel like the FI one like makes a little bit more sense. Like I remember seeing like, have you seen like the Ikigai model?
Ikigai. I don't think so.
It's like 4 Venn diagrams, and it's like this is what you should do with your life. It's like what you love and what you do, and like what people want and what you can get paid for. Where those 4 things intersect, what you should do. And I remember getting to the spot where it's like what people need, and I was like, how the frick should I know? I don't know what people need. And that's been like, that has been kind of an unintended consequence of YouTube. Is like you can then figure it out. It's like you make a video, if it bombs, it's fine.
Yeah. And the ones you like don't expect anything to really like happen with, they're like the ones that kind of go places. I'm like, oh, interesting. That is what the FE world is liking right now.
Oh no, my first video, like I think I like randomly I did my first like INTJ video. It was like INTJ description versus reality is what it's called. And I look back on it now, it's like so cringy.
Oh
And the
yeah,
reason
I
I
did
find
the same.
it cringy is because I was a little bit more emotional and
Mhm,
raw, maybe you might call
mhm.
it. I find it cringy. And
Yeah,
that's what resonates with people, as it turns out, when you like
yeah.
show a little bit more. And I haven't done a video like that since, really.
Yeah, that's always somewhat traumatic when you like look back at other videos and you're like, oh gosh, that's where I came from. All right, I'm gonna start accepting the journey of where I was and to where I am now.
Forces YouTube kind of forces SI. Normally, I don't document things or
Mhm,
things, so I just like
mhm.
I leave it. I'm like the future's better. I'm getting better and better. But with YouTube, you videos get brought back up to your attention with the old comments,
Yeah,
like new comments that come in on old videos, and it like forces you to look at the past. Like, well,
yeah. Oh, 100%. Um, and yeah, I would say with this question too that I'm very much the same. An unexpected part of my own journey has been like finding community in a place where I didn't really think authenticity could live. And you look at the internet and it's like, sure, like I before YouTube I had met, friends on the internet and whatever, but I wasn't like when I went into YouTube, I wasn't expecting the meaningful connections that I ended up making and some of the really cool people I ended up talking to. And I know you do video sessions also with people. And I remember being like, oh gosh, like who's gonna book these, like what kind of people? And like everyone has been so cool and so smart and just like so many interesting people. I was talking to a guy like a few weeks ago who works for NASA on all this weather stuff and just like the coolest humans, And so that was definitely an unexpected reward of being like, wow, not only like do I like these people, but like they're into the same kind of stuff that I am. And so it makes the conversation easier.
yeah, for sure. It's like these are my people. It's like where are these people in real life?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Good luck finding them. That's what I usually tell people. And they're like, "Where do I find an INTJ?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, check the internet, man. Like, that's the best I can tell you." Um, so okay, so kind of coming to the present time, what would you say is like your greatest challenge currently?
This is going to be very specific to people who do YouTube, I guess, but I am at a constant battle with YouTube comments and not getting into FI and like not seeing it personally or whatever. I don't
Mhm,
know. Like I've thought about this from so many different angles. I'm like maybe it's because well, what'll happen is someone will say like a negative comment, and
mhm,
my first instinct is to just absorb it and be like, yes, that's true. And I
mhm,
wonder if that has to do with like leading with a perceiving function or
mhm,
maybe my own personal like stuff, that I have to like work through. But if someone leaves a negative comment, I just like absorb it. Like even if it's
mhm.
like blatantly hateful and like not
Yeah,
constructive in nature at all, I still just like my first instinct to absorb it and I think about it and I think about it and I think about it. Um, and then I'm like, okay, so they said I do this thing wrong, so I'm gonna try to like fix it. And then
mhm,
I might get another comment and it's kind of contradicting that previous comment, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, two negative comments. Okay, I'm gonna try to fix it. I'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and then recently it's been like weighing on me because I'm getting in touch with FI. Like the stage I'm at right now is I'm trying to bump up like the positive FI, not
mhm,
just negative FI. But I'm like, I want to enjoy this. Like, I want to enjoy making every video because
mhm.
some of the parts, like, I will enjoy the whole thing if I enjoy making like every video and enjoy every day. And I never think about enjoyment until like I'm just consciously
Yeah,
trying to run it now. And it like really is hindering my enjoyment. And I'm like, maybe I need to do more journaling. Maybe I need to do more processing. Maybe I just need to let it go. But I just don't know how to just let it go. So
mhm.
specific to me, but that's something that's like weighing on me right now.
Yeah. That's a good one. Um, I think what I definitely have, and I still like will like touch on like that same kind of like topic really actually as it relates to YouTube. One thing that helped me was looking at some of the people who have like either TI or FI higher, you know, and whether it be like an ENTP or an INFP or INTP, and looking at how they handle certain kinds of criticism, you know, and how, like, what do they do when they get a comment like that? Or what do they do in a circumstance when someone would say something to them like that? And it's just like, so often what I was finding is like they either laugh it off, shrug it off, you know, it's almost like, and then if there's any truth to it, especially the TIs do this well, if there's any truth to it, like they just like accept it and they're like, oh yeah, I totally was like that before. I'm so cringy now looking back at it, right? Move on, you know? And it's like, I think having us, you know, having that TE over our FI, it's like, we're just like, it feels like we did something that didn't functionally work for the outside world. And it's like, I have to figure out why, you know, I have to like fix and make better, when it's just like, yeah, like they didn't like it, that's cool. Or maybe they had something, hit something that was true, and whatever, I can change it or not. So yeah, like watching, there's actually this girl who I started watching her channel just because of how intense her FI is. I think she's like an ISFP. And you know, she talks about like basically her whole channel is about like her boundaries that she creates and like the lifestyle that she wants to live, and just being so unapologetic with her own path. And I'm like, wow, I want to be that level of unapologetic with my own FI in these kinds of situations, but also
Yeah.
just in life.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting, because like what'll happen is like I'll get a comment and then I'll kind of bounce it off my husband. Like I'm like, should I respond to this? Should I delete this? I hate deleting comments. He's much more
Mhm.
likely to just delete it, but I hate deleting comments. I also
Mhm.
never, like, I've deleted maybe 3 comments my whole channel life,
Mhm.
besides like porn link channels.
Yeah.
But so I just like don't like deleting, but I'll bounce them off him, and he's always just like, don't worry about it. And he just like, I don't know, it's like it's almost like he's just like impervious. He's just like impenetrable. It's just like, meh.
Yeah. Must be nice. It's also not his content, so
Right, right. That's
yeah. I think like, and I would say so like kind of the way I'd answer this too is similar, in terms of I think my greatest challenge right now is being, it's really like that FI and SE, I think evolution for myself of being so unapologetic with the things that like I like or enjoy for myself, that I don't have to explain them to anyone. Like I don't owe anyone an explanation. I don't even owe myself an explanation, because that's what I'll do. I'll be like, well, I'm allowed to do this thing because actually in the long run it would help. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I don't have to do that. I can just go and do the thing and enjoy it.
yeah.
And then that's fine as it is. And I can action these elements of change in my life without having to explain it. And I think for myself, it's like I always stand so hard on that TE reasoning for like, okay, well, if I decide to go this way, it is because, you know, this would be X, Y, and Z. It's like that's the default, you know. But even just out of practice, of like the practice of not doing that, being like, I can do whatever I want to and not have to explain, is been a great kind of form of therapy for myself, because I realized how addicted I am to having to have reason attached to literally everything that I do.
That's true. My gosh, that's like an epiphany just now, actually. Yeah, it's like if people leave a negative comment, I like can usually always provide some sort of rationality. It's like I made this
Mhm.
choice for this reason, da, 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 da. And then I'm like, by the time I type it out, I'm like, this is like 3 paragraphs. I'm not gonna do that. So then I just erase it all corresponding.
Yeah.
But it's like this, it is like a compulsion to explain. It's like I am rational. I know it looks kind of stupid, but I can explain.
Yeah, exactly. I have a rhyme and reason behind. Do you have 10 minutes? Because I will rattle it all off to you. I think that's also like that. I think that is an element of NI in there too. Is like we are so focused on the like understanding of things. Like what is the holistic view of this? Like, and if we can see that someone does not understand the NI of something, it's our responsibility to be like, no, but you need to understand why I did X, Y, and Z, or you need to understand why this works the way it does. And it's like, if they don't understand, it's almost like we're not doing our job. At least that's how I feel. It's like, I'm not doing my job unless I force understanding on other people. But it's also like, not everyone needs to have understanding forced on them too.
Right. Ugh. The comment I get recently is like, why don't you talk about the 8 functions? You're like, they'll say something like, you're uneducated, and if you think that there are only 4 functions or something.
Yeah.
And I want to explain to people, I'm like, I've purposely chosen to only do 4 functions. I know about the idea and the theory of all 8. I was like, I just haven't gone there myself growth-wise, so I'm not going to present something if I haven't gone there.
Yeah.
Whatever, no one cares.
I'm like, why don't you start a YouTube channel and you do it? I'll be your first subscriber.
I've literally started doing that.
Yeah. Like, seriously, everyone. It's like, if anyone has a comment, like, please make your own channel. Everyone has a different perspective. There's enough subscribers for everyone out there. It's like everyone brings new, and it's like, not like I do enjoy people's feedback, and I do enjoy hearing what they want to know more about.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, listen, I can only do so much, so I might get to it, but I also might not. And that's okay too. And so, okay, so how do you see overcoming kind of like this, like what you're talking about, play into like increasing your own like cognitive freedom? So the idea of like, okay, like let's say like these comments come in and just like your husband is like, they kind of like just like roll off your back. You're just like, hey, ain't no thing. Like, how do you see that being implementing, I guess, like more freedom into your life?
Well, I think that if I got to the point where I really could just let it roll off my back, and I'm like, I don't care what these people say. I'm just
Mhm.
going to do what I want when I want to do it. I don't owe anyone explanation unapologetically. I feel like
Mhm.
that almost like is the definition of freedom. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not like chained to other people's expectations, and I can just do whatever the heck I want. Like, I think a big reason that I started doing this is because I just didn't really like having a boss, and like these are the standards you have to teach. I mean, there are other factors as well, but one of the factors is that I just don't like being dictated. Like, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And then with this issue with commenters, it's like I have another boss if I'm going to keep listening to all the commenters. It's like
Right.
I have thousands of bosses, and they are just like telling me what to do. And so if I could just like get over this, like take the good ones, then I feel like
Mhm.
that would be freedom. Then it would be like, okay, I'm not like slave to other people's opinions. Like, I don't have to do what they want.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I would say the same thing for myself, like not being a slave to the reasoning for everything as if like that is the dictator. And also, not being a slave to everything having to have its perfect order, because I think that's kind of the other side of our personality. It's like everything has to align in this particular way in order for us to get somewhere. And it's like this path where these pieces kind of come into place and we go down this path, and it's what we're doing all of the time. But it's like, if you want to go off that path, right, if you want to just go do some random SC somewhere, right, it feels as though again, it's like kind of like allowance thing. It's like our brain's like, no, you're not allowed to do that. But it's like, well, what if I am allowed to do it? I can do the SC, and then I can go right back on the whole momentum train just like I was, because that's what I'm going to do anyway, And for myself, it's very much like the inner turmoil of kind of like doing something that is outside of, like, I don't like mixing things up, especially with my time. That like creates a lot of stress for me. So when plans like suddenly change and like stuff happens, and all of a sudden things like the way I thought things were going to kind of work best for like the day or whatever, when things kind of get thrown upside down and someone's like, hey, you want to go to the Six Flags tomorrow? It's like, I wish I was the kind of person who would just be like, no big deal. Like, yeah, sure. Let's go. I like there's because to me, there is freedom and just the ability to do that. Now, whether you choose to or not, that's fine. But if I had the ability to without feeling like there's death on the inside, like the world is going to come crashing down if you just decide to still, you know, flip the script and, you know, change things like this for tomorrow. I feel like that would be a great source of freedom. So that's definitely where I'm kind of trying to work towards, like have things like that not feel like death.
Right. No, that's so true. And it just kind of like reminds me of like, even in my pursuit of trying to develop TE and SE, like, in my mind, I'm like, I've developed SE pretty good, but it really is like, it's like in buckets. Like, like we talked about before, it's like the spontaneity side of SE. Is that there? No, not there at all.
Right. Yeah.
No, I'm doing SE so good because I'm wearing a Nirvana shirt. Look at that. It has some colors on it. Look, good SE.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, okay, in that one bucket of SE, sure. And then it's like, you look at the multifaceted stone that is SE and you're like, well, I got this facet on this one side and a little bit of this one. And the rest of it's totally dull, you know?
It's like I bought a shirt one time and I sit on my couch all day. So I don't think I really have SE dialed.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So was there any other like last thoughts you had? That was my last question.
Oh, nice. Cool. No, well, I mean, maybe like, do you have any, like, do you have a method that you've done for personal growth? Do you like share with people? Like if you had like one method that's like the thing?
I really look at, for myself, starting with your four cognitive functions, and then but keeping in mind the value of all eight. So a lot of times, you know, when I'm looking at a certain situation that I want to grow in, I really have to identify, is this closest to my SE or is this really an SI thing that I'm looking at? And I need to approach this more with an SI mindset. And, you know, that's okay. I don't need to know everything about that function. I don't need to apply that function in every single way of my life. But if it's just, you know, I need to get better at organizing like my damn cables for like my computer stuff, you know, it's like, okay, I need to put on an SI like hat for this and like figure out like what is the order that I will physically in the real world maintain all of the time for these things to, you know, keep the way that they should be kept. Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, working on our four functions, but then respecting the other ones enough to know when you need to pull from those and yeah, just apply them like a tool in a certain situation.
Yeah, no, I really like the way that you put that. Well, awesome.
What about for you though? I want to know what you're saying.
Okay, well, so I've heard lots of people's, so I've heard of, you know, the concept of the four sides of the mind or whatever. So I'm interested in developing that. So it's like, and particularly with the extroverted functions, I think, since I'm an introvert. So I've tried to, so first I developed TE for a while, maybe like 5 years. And then I've been working on SE for maybe the last 2 years, basically since just before the start of the YouTube channel is when I started trying to work on SE. And so my thought process is that eventually when I feel like ready to, I'll try to develop NE maybe. That might not yield good results, but I'm like willing to experiment with it and see.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. I think what's so cool about the functions just in general is they have such a tool-like quality to them that it's like the more skilled and proficient you get with them, the more comfortable you are reaching for those tools in your toolbox, like when it's the right time to, you know, so like even like having your stint of like SE for however long that lasts, it's like, yeah, you've gotten proficient in using that tool. And now when you need to go into that situation, you're going to be like, hey, look how great I can use this wrench. Jill, wish you could use this SE wrench like this. Cool. Well, it was great talking to you, Alexis, and yeah, I guess goodbye, internet people.
Nice. Guys, thanks so much for coming on.